Hello and welcome back to Podcasting's Praxis. I'm Dave, my pronouns are he and him.
I'm Jamie, my pronouns are he and him.
I'm Rob, mine are he and him.
And I'm
Alice
Gareth, my pronouns.
Go. You've earned
full
that.
blast committing. Hello, my name's Gareth, and my pronouns are also he and him.
Yeah, no Alistair tonight, so we've brought in a ringer. Thanks for coming in, Gareth.
Yeah, the guy who just comes in and talks over the intro within 30 seconds of starting the podcast.
Yeah, you're not here to replace Rob.
Yeah.
Oh, fucking hell. Yeah,
yep.
So, why are we here, Rob? Why have you called me from my sweat pool?
Well, I have summoned you from the sweat pool.
Emerging like fucking the Baron Harkonnen from my sweat pool to podcast.
I've summoned you for several reasons, and specifically I summoned Gareth because I want to talk sport about some buses, because there was a big NAO report out, and I love the NAO and I love talking about buses, but that will be the main topic later. I wanted to start with turning around the NHS England, which is in a bad way and shape, and plans are afoot to make it better.
Is this the fucking robot doctors thing?
This is not the robot doctors, but I thought we could start there.
That's fun flavour.
Yeah. Yeah. Essentially, we're going to have Bender bending Rodriguez like fix your arm. It's fine. Don't worry about it.
I doubt that. He doesn't sound very British.
No, this is the problem with the NHS. Turns out is not so much like a lack of money or a lack of staff or
It's a lack
the
of
RA.
good old Blitz spirit. Is that what it is?
No, well,
You make all
actually,
the doctors wear tin hats.
no. The incentives, Jamie. The incentives were all wrong. So what they're doing now is
All the lights in the hospitals need to be turned off.
Yeah.
This is from The Guardian. Money for hospitals in England is to be linked to patient ratings ministers have allowed. So basically, we just need to have more consumer satisfaction inside our hospitals.
See, right? Yeah. No, I get that this means they're gonna as they discharge you from the hospital, they're gonna text you a fucking survey. We promise it'll only take 5 minutes. But for a brief, glorious second there, I imagined they were rating the hospitals based on how cool the patients were or so. You know what I mean? Like, that hospital can't have any money. Its patients are fucking ugly as sin. Ward after ward of ugly patients.
Yeah, most unexpected comeback of 2026 is Hot or Not, but this time run through the revised NHS app.
Oh, this sucks. Am I now going to be referred to as a customer of the NHS?
I know this, Rob. I know you've got more to say. I just want to cut in. Firstly, my wife is a health economist, and so she has. Health economics is like one of the most actually useful forms of economics because it actually is part of the reason the NHS exists and is very good. We have all of the knowledge of how to allocate funds across the NHS. Like, that's kind of a solved science. The issue is that there isn't enough of that money. It's not
no. There is plenty of money. It's just being allocated, inefficiently because we don't do that by asking
because
people.
Because of all the health service that gets in the way of the private doctors. Yeah.
Yeah.
What they need to distribute the money more effectively is a Thunderdome.
Yeah, I mean, it's like the surgeons might have fixed your wobbling spine, but did they leave a chocolate on your pillow? No, so fuck them.
Yeah. Did the surgeons fix you enough that you can go into the fucking big dome from the end of the Crystal Maze and collect vouchers for them to spend on MRI machines?
So what this is doing? So another thing, this is adding because you're not going to get rid of the actual way the adults allocate funding to hospitals based on need, based on maximizing QALYs across the whole NHS. For any of the nerds, look, Google what a QALY is. It's a very useful measure of how to actually make this whole system work. This is not going to get rid of that. All it's going to be is another pointless, little pathetic toddler in a ball pit system that will have to overlay the actual adult system. So it's just adding, let me just translate, extra cost to administer an additional pointless system.
No, you might think so, but actually it's it's a market-based incentive for hospitals to do better. Let me read you a little bit from the Times, because of course this was given to the Times first. Under the plans, patients would be contacted a few weeks after treatment and asked if it was good enough for the hospital to receive their full payment from, NHS funding.
You're kidding me?
If patients say no, about 10% of the standard payment rate will be diverted to a local improvement fund. Initial pilots will be targeted at services with a record of poor care before the model is expanded across the country by next year.
That sounds so right. The thing for any major infrastructure is you want stability of funding so that you can get things that actually work long term. You can get economies of scale, and critically, you can do things like grow skilled teams to solve the problem. Because actually, money is one part of it, but ensuring you've got skilled people who, by the way, you pay is a key part of solving problems. Where you have, for example, maternity care in York, where I was having experienced that fairly recently, wasn't great. And it's acknowledged as being one of the worst areas for maternity care. Making babies happen or appear in England.
Yeah, not happen. That's a different.
And the way that you solve that problem is not by arbitrarily making funds go up and down on a cycle of 6 months or something.
No, on an immediate cycle. This is per treatment. So if your leg is broken, and then you get out of hospital, and then afterwards they send you a little survey. It'll be like that. That button that you sometimes now get in restroom rooms of is it good, bad, smiley face, that kind of thing. They'll just send you one of those. And if literally you weren't satisfied with the mint on your pillow or the state of the bathroom or whatever, then you can give it a frowny face, and then the NHS fund will immediately take 10% of the funding of that particular thing out.
Yeah, it's just so much more asinine than I was expecting, because I thought it would just be like Gareth said, they'd collect all the surveys from people and then go right, okay, well, you know what I mean, this doctor only got 4 stars on average, so they lose some of the money next fucking year. Or something, and the hospital has to close a wing because people didn't like the wallpaper. But no, the fact that they're not going to they're going to take the money immediately away from the operation they just performed. Fantastic.
Jamie, I'm visualizing like ICE agents, without any branding, but just kind of these paramilitary guys who have an inflated sense of themselves, but in kind of the NHS pale blue colors, and they just fucking storm in and nick the wheelchair you're sat on. They nick the crutch from the garbage. Just asset strip the hospital by 10%.
We're Streeting's door kickers, but they just have
4-star rating or whatever.
They just have crowbars and a big van to put all.
Just ripping copper out of the wall. Literally just a bunch of paramilitaries ripping copper out the walls of some late 2000s PFI hospital. Yeah, amazing.
Continue the times though. However, senior NHS bosses are concerned about the plans. Yeah, no shit. Quote, none of our members have raised this idea with us as a way of improving care. And to our knowledge, no other healthcare system internationally adopts this model currently.
Yes!
Well, someone's got to be the pioneering spirit of the British government.
Yeah.
Fuck yes.
Who was it who said that? Sorry, was it? I presume not someone very senior.
The chief executive of the NHS Confederation. So I'm sure he's like a rube who doesn't know what the fuck he's talking about.
Yes, go on, Wes. Just rip it to shreds. You see?
Oh
Here we go.
God.
It's not Wes, is it? It's his weird, private, health privatization mate who just has an access all areas VIP pass around.
I mean, that's the basic that's the basic thing behind this, right? Because this is just another way of turning your healthcare into a consumer product where you get a little review sheet. It's like you buy some fucking Geekor from Amazon and a week later they say, are you happy with your Geekor? Or any product that you order online. It's just you just commoditize healthcare, and then you just slowly get people used to the idea that this is yet another product that you can, rate and subscribe. And then all of a sudden, from later in the times, in some areas of care, Streeting will attempt to use competition between care providers to drive up standards as patients shop around for short waiting lists. Cool.
What does that even mean in practice?
Well, it's if you...
providers? How is that an impact on it?
Yeah,
Well, it's like, David, if you live in Manchester, right, and there's a bunch of GP practices, and your GP may have I don't know, you call and you say, help, there's blood spurting from my eyeball, and then you say, well, and they say, well, we can see you in 2 hours, and then you ring another one, and you say, help, my, blood is spurting from my eyeballs, and then they go, well, we can see you in 15 minutes, so then, you would simply go to the more efficient clinic and vote with your money.
What would actually happen is
Right.
both of those would tell you to ring 111.
Yeah.
Yeah. This is so it's Grinder for NHS services, but run by Palantir.
I think you know what I mean. I
Oh.
personally, if I'm in need of medical care, what I love to do is go on fucking TripAdvisor. I feel like that's like an essential step in feeling better about like fucking my chances of survival. Is if I have to go and read reviews of the fucking surgeon. Do you know what I mean? Like
That is what you want. Yeah.
Yeah.
TripAdvisor, but Palantir, but for NHS services. Fantastic.
really want to
Excellent.
go. You know what I mean? I need a fucking like a new kidney or something. I'll just go and look up like the doctor, the doctors I can choose from, and you've got a bunch of fucking like people on there going like, "Oh, the guy was terrible." You know what I mean? Wasn't white at all. Like, yeah, that's really helpful. You know?
Arguably, the
let's
worst part
give
about that
Wes-
entire process is having to search that with the word Reddit in it as well.
Yeah.
Help, I'm dying,
Yeah.
Reddit. Mm.
No, I
Let's
trust,
just-
I
let's
trust
like-
the
give-
British public
give
to
what-
be normal in reviews of doctors. Absolutely 1000%. Yeah.
Well, yeah, quite. Well, this is the point I was going to make. Is let's just give Wes the benefit of the doubt. Say this.
Well,
is-
said once again,
we don't
you know,
ever have to give Wes the benefit of the doubt, but let's just say we do.
Well, I
Who
mean,
has
once again,
time to do this? Who are the people who are going to have time to do this? I'm guessing it's definitely going to be the people who are like more vulnerable. You know, the disabled people who are, or people with chronic conditions who are in hospital a lot. They're obviously the people who are going to be using this, rather than say the one-off annoying, kind of like the one-off slightly injured people who go in and find it not to their personal like. I'm just thinking of like how much this is a definitely a progressive way of allocating funds across NHS services, right?
yeah, I mean, but in terms of efficiently allocating resources, there was one bit in here that I think, will stimulate everybody to work really hard and like make sure that this happens in a fair and ethical manner. Apparently now, hospital bosses can get a 10% salary bonus if they reduce waiting lists. So, all they have to do is fuck the numbers around massively, or, don't see slow patients because that would affect the boss's bonus, and then they'll be fine.
Yeah.
Surely a system that has no history of texting people to ask if they still want appointments, then considering them appointments, and then saying that we had a bunch more appointments done within some arbitrary period of time would do something like that.
Yeah, at a point where we're seeing the fallibility of senior leaders in our hospitals in the news quite robustly at the moment. Yeah, this feels like a good idea. Great, yeah.
Well, there was one more idea that was also in this piece in the Times, and I thought I should mention this because we talked about it before. Quote, a significant expansion of weight loss injections is likely to be a centerpiece of proposals to prevent obesity-related illnesses, alongside imposing targets for supermarkets to reduce the sales of unhealthy foods. So we're
Now,
still
listen
doing...
here, Hannibal. In this box is labelled the weight loss injections, and in this box is labelled the kill your disabled nan injections. Now, don't get these confused. This box is labelled 1A, and the other box is labelled 1A. But you'll see that the 1A is using a slightly different font. Now, pay close attention, Hannibal. Yeah, this is fantastic, isn't it? Just like, oh my god, just like injections being pumped out for like the assisted dying injections and the weight loss injections being sent out in NHS trucks around the country, and definitely not getting confused. What a fucking dystopia we live in, man.
I mean, the good news is that, like,
Wes so fucking obsessed with the weight loss injections as well. Who is paying him? Which weight loss injections company?
Where's that? Yeah,
Well,
where's that pie chart of all the people who literally pay him tens of thousands of pounds? It's one of those guys.
We
isn't it?
discussed it before. This was one of those things they were going to do a big trial run in the Greater Manchester area, and I think that was with Mounjaro, which is made by Wegovy, which is one of the big pharma companies.
That
And
sounds like a Linux distribution.
And, and let me read you just a touch from an article in Sky that was published last week, Thursday. According to the Medicine Healthcare Products Regulatory Agency, which is a UK agency, I think, there have been 181 cases of acute or chronic pancreatitis linked to Mounjaro. So, like, yes, we are making it more widely available, but you may also, like, lose your pancreas, which I'm sure you don't need for much.
So this is again a wheelhouse that isn't mine, but I'm just taking stolen valor off my darling wife. Like, one of the things that's critical to the functioning of the NHS and its power over big pharma is NICE, right? Is the National Institute of Clinical Excellence, basically the organization that in the past had teeth sharp enough to say, go fuck yourself to Big Pharma, and Big Pharma had to basically reduce its prices, and also wasn't able to just put stupid, pointless drugs out on the market and charge the earth for them, because they'd have to actually robustly prove themselves, with lots of panels of supporting academics across the country, lots of them in York, going, that's absolute bullshit, don't begin to believe it. Now, NICE has had its power eroded away over the last 2 decades to the point where, like, it's just yes-manning drugs through the door. Not quite that bad, but it's like massively been basically kind of hijacked as an organization. And this is a good example of what happens when you don't have NICE challenging. You have a situation where NICE is being bypassed, essentially, to get this stuff on the street. It's, tremendous. Really, really good. I'm so pleased about this. Wow.
I've just realized at some point, right, some fucking Labour melt, whether it's an actual, like, official party fucking member or an MP or just some goon on fucking Blue Sky, but some Labour clown is going to argue that, you know, the public reviewing their fucking, like, healthcare providers and that going into a big league table might have prevented Lucy Letby.
Oh,
I mean, right, take your hand off the fucking lathe, man.
Yeah, please stop doing that.
Oh, fuck's sake.
Like, that genuine line in the sand, that is absolutely going to happen. That's absolutely going to happen. Yeah.
Before we get to our main topic, I wanted to talk about, like, one more bit. Yeah, sorry about that. You remember how all the prisons were, like, super overcrowded and, like, Labour had to let, you know, a bunch of people, you know, extras from the movie The Warriors out?
No, I only remember the last prison-related thing we talked about, which was the Iceland.
Well, this is not quite the Iceland, but it's quite similar. About a month ago, there was a piece by Alistair Gray in the Financial Times, which was titled "UK Minister Asks Big Tech to Help Create Prison Outside Prison for Criminals."
Wait, what?
Yes.
God
what we need is more prison in society.
Yes,
Britain is already a fucking prison. Like
mighty.
They don't need big tech to do this.
Is this
we need
helmets for prisoners? Again.
It's not quite VR helmets. It's more wearable tech for people who are in, like, should be in prison but are not because it's too full.
Is this fucking ankle bracelets that tell you to stand up every hour?
Has the patent expired on fucking ankle bracelets? Is that what this is?
Just send this minister to fucking Caterham if they want to see what an outside prison looks like.
Right.
Jesus.
Let me read you a little bit from. This is why I bring it up, because there was a follow-up piece about this in The Guardian today or yesterday. Quote: tracking devices inserted under offenders' skin, robots assigned to contain prisoners, and driverless vehicles used to transport them among the measures proposed by technology companies to ministers who are gathering ideas to tackle the crisis in the UK justice system.
Yeah.
The nail stapling and ISO cubes.
What if instead of using expensive cells where you have to feed the prisoners, what if we just froze them for like 30 years while we also learn how to make?
Yeah, load them all up onto the SS Botany Bay and make it the future's problem.
I've never seen a paragraph in actual copy that better represents the AM-FM dichotomy.
Yes.
Of, like, actual machines versus fucking magic. Like, every single thing in that paragraph is fucking magic.
Yes.
What they need to do is maybe decriminalize a bunch of shit that people don't need to be in prisons for. Maybe that's, like, the first thing you can do. Like, if you really want to do this, just do that.
Yeah, but Gareth, I don't want to do that. I want to have the security robot from Andor that beats prisoners to death.
Well, yeah.
The quote again from the article: the Justice Secretary has previously said she is not squeamish about using technology such as gait recognition, a type of biometric monitoring of humans' unique movement patterns, which some believe, presumably the manufacturers.
We invented fucking leg phrenology. What the hell?
Yes.
Handwriting experts love this.
Is gate recognition a real fucking thing, or did they
No.
just get it from Mission
No.
Impossible 4? I think.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
5.
yeah.
Actually, it's 5. I think. But
That's
yeah.
yeah. No, so
But I
that's some
mean,
good
to be
knowledge
fair,
in
like
this
some
one,
Palantir-inspired company in Silicon Valley got the idea from one of the Mission Impossible movies, and then they sold it on to the fucking creditors and rubes over at the fucking UK state, essentially. Yeah, because gait recognition, to finish the quote, which some believe could help prevent violence in jails before it happens.
What, like if a guy just looks especially jaunty on his walk, it's like he's going to shiv someone.
Yes, exactly. Yeah.
Guards, stop him!
let's just
He's walking
paraphrase
without rhythm.
Oh God!
Yeah, no more will
I reckon it's
prisoners
easy to
in
justice.
no more will prisoners in low security jails be able to sing and dance in the rain. They will simply be shot on sight.
They should just invent the giant fucking shoes from Face Off already and put us all out of our misery.
Yeah, Jesus. I think it's very easy for a Justice Secretary to say they're not squeamish about something that doesn't fucking exist. It's like saying I'm not squeamish about driverless cars or I'm not squeamish about hyperloops. Yeah, because neither of those things fucking exist. Jesus. Okay, right. Yeah.
Well, I mean, the other
I'm sure
thing
that there's nothing else like that's going to get rolled out that we have a long history of understanding that it's extremely biased and dubious.
Well, you'd think so, but like you remember that cool movie Minority Report where there was no problems and the people in the little paddling pool just had a 100% correct record.
Yep.
Yes.
Quote again from the article. Other suggestions from the tech companies included using high-powered quantum computers which don't exist yet, to
Fuck my life.
to
Why not just consult an orb, right?
Yeah, that's
Why not just say you're gonna use the Mind Stone to like fucking see crime wherever it occurs, and then dispatch like fucking Captain America or something.
bring back
the Starship Enterprise will
oracles.
simply beam prisoners to the moon.
Exactly. Yeah.
Bring back oracles. Bring back having to sacrifice a pure white bull to figure out who's going to do a bank robbery next. Like just chain some poor woman up in a cave full of fumes somewhere in fucking Wales, and have her write vague sentences out, and then just like jail people on that basis. Why not? No, the idea here is to use high-powered quantum computers to analyze past data to predict future behaviors and create diversion paths, and to
We're doing the fucking time variance authority for fuck's sake.
They're going to invent Madam Web. That's what they're going to do. I love to live in like serious times. Do you know what I mean? It never ceases to thrill me.
Sensibles are in charge. Sensibles are in charge.
No, the other thing the high-powered quantum computer is obviously going to do is also automate sentence calculations in the overstretched probation service. So you might end up in many more years of prison. Why? Well, because the oracle and the paddling pool told you.
Why are we spending money on a high-powered quantum computer to do a thing that like a one-column Excel calculation?
Yeah.
Like what?
My question is this about? Are they saying quantum computers here instead of AI? Is AI finally like on the fucking? Is it finally on the downslope?
Oh yeah, that'd be good, wouldn't it?
I don't know.
Right. You can literally swap out quantum computers for AI. There, literally, you can swap it in and out. Yeah. You're onto it. Yeah, that's interesting.
Because the other thing I wanted to mention on tonight's episode just briefly is I saw a report today, or yesterday even, but someone did an assessment of agentic AI. Is that how you say that? Or agentic?
Yeah.
Or fucking,
Agentic AI. Yeah. Bullshit. Doesn't work.
Assessed a whole bunch of those, and at how
Is
they
that it's large language models with screenshots, isn't it? Basically, that's essentially what those are.
Basically.
Yeah.
So they got like they put a bunch of models like through tests and evaluated them based on how successful they were at tasks. The highest scoring one, Gemini 2.5 Pro, got 30% of its task. And then it falls off very sharply from there.
And all of the researchers were bankrupted in the process, as their bank accounts were like variously emptied buying groceries from across the other side of the country. Yeah.
Okay. Amazon's Nova Pro achieved success 1.7% of the time. The future is now.
Yeah, this is that thing where it was similar to like the agentic AI that somebody, I think in the New York Times, was trying it, and it was like it kept wanting to buy that person like eggs from like a store in Idaho for $12 an egg or some shit like that.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. The most expensive eggs since the fucking Fabergé ones.
Yeah, sorry, just one more quote from this article about like the fucking, the Minority Report Madam Web future for prisoners and people on release. Quote, a second meeting with tech companies is scheduled for Tuesday, which is today's day of recording, with Lord Timpson. Yeah, and if you're listening, fuck off. With Lord Timpson due to hear 20-minute pitches for new ideas at what officials are calling an innovation den.
Turning up to the innovation den and demanding that the way we solve this is by finding deep, foliated substrate calcite.
I think, frankly, like EastEnders has been a lot worse since they killed off Innovation Den.
I'm not going to top that. Right. I was going to say something clever and insightful about the misery that Lord Timpson is. The Timpsons guy is having to endure here. But you know what? There's no point.
He voluntarily made that guy fucking walked into this system like he knew what he was getting. Well, I don't know. I don't know.
But it's fine, Rob. It's fine. He can change it from the inside.
Oh, yeah, damn, I keep forgetting that.
Yep. This is an ad break on Podcasting as Praxis. This advert is for the Patreon of Podcasting as Praxis. On the Patreon of Podcasting as Praxis, you will get at least 2 monthly bonus episodes of Podcasting as Praxis, where we discuss lots of topics, including new types of guy, celestial boondoggles, monetizing whale shit, and, reluctantly, Scott Paul. You will also be able to join the Podcasting as Praxis Discord, a place to talk with like-minded people about lots of topics, including new types of guy, celestial boondoggles, monetizing whale shit, but not Scott Paul, and also, of course, Podcasting as Praxis. If that isn't enough Podcasting as Praxis for you, the Discord also includes a bonus channel where we post the bits that don't make the final cut of the episodes. Fans of both mediocre and bad podcasting have everything to gain by subscribing to the Patreon of Podcasting as Praxis. You will also no longer get ads on episodes of Podcasting as Praxis. £5 a month will get you all of that and maybe more at patreon.com/you guessed it, Praxiscast. That's patreon.com/Praxiscast, the place where we sell Podcasting as Praxis.
All right, so we shall then swiftly move on to our main topic, which is one of the many reasons, apart from his delightful personality, that Gareth is here, because I wanted to talk about not the trains, but
it's quite a threatening way to, his delightful personality.
Fucking Bond villain ass. So you're probably wondering why I gathered you all here today.
Now, Gareth,
are you sitting with Gino in your lap right now?
Yeah. Now, Gareth, if you could please touch this metal plate, and then we can swiftly move on to the main topic.
Oh, damn. Yeah.
No, the reason I wanted to have Gareth on is I wanted to talk about, do a follow-up that's literally been 200 episodes in the making. I wanted to talk about the trains, also important cousins. I wanted to talk about the buses again.
Hey, I'm a big bus fan. Buses are great. We need buses. Buses,
yes.
Trains, they're pals.
Yeah, and the reason I want to talk about the buses is, like I said, almost exactly 3 years ago, Jesus Christ, and almost exactly 200 episodes ago, in episode 147, we talked about the bus back better strategy, which was, somewhere back in the Jurassic period.
3 years ago.
Yes.
Yeah, Jurassic period is right, yeah. Fucking hell.
Yeah.
Sorry, I have no other point other than just to make large, like kind of some exhaling noises. Was bus back better? And Boris going on about making fucking buses from wine crates or whatever it was. Was that 3 years ago?
Well,
feels
that
like
was
fucking
during the elections.
Feels
That
like
was
fucking 20 years ago
2019.
and a
Wine
month ago.
crates would be like even fucking further back, wouldn't it?
Yeah.
True.
So, like this strategy was, we'll get into it, but it was actually implemented by the Tory government under several leaders, and now it's almost 3 years later. So our good friends at the National Audit Office have, been in contact, and I've read the new report about this strategy and about how bus transport is faring in England specifically, and in England outside London, because Wales and Scotland have their own systems, which are outside the
with
scope
their
of
own
this report.
problems.
Yes, with their own problems, and also not London, because DFT does. The TfL does all the stuff for London, and that's a whole different thing. So that all falls outside the scope. This is just England outside London, about which is what this report is concerned with.
It's the weirdest fucking smeared donut you've ever seen, basically, is what you're talking about.
Yeah. So, just a little bit of repetition as a treat, just so you understand where this report is coming from. Buses are and remain still by far the most used form of public transport in the UK. Even outside, if you don't count London, people took last year 1.8 billion journeys on a bus altogether in 2023, 2024. Which works out, again, if you discount London, to about 30 trips for every person of every age living in England, which is, that's of course, some people just never take it, and that also means that some people use it as their daily mode of transport. But the people who do use it for their daily mode of transport are primarily the young, the old, the poor, and the disabled, which are, of course, the people who don't matter to any UK government.
The pig people.
The
pig people.
second-class citizens who don't own a car.
Yes, those
exactly.
ones. Yes.
If you're not a driver, then this government isn't backing you. They've said it several times.
Yeah. And now to quote from the report, despite their importance, bus services in England outside London have been in a long-term decline. Passengers numbers dropped, and the size of the bus network has been reduced in the decade leading up to the COVID pandemic, while ticket costs increase more quickly than rail fares or motoring costs. So buses...
Imagine increasing quicker than fucking rail fares, holy shit.
I know. I mean, this is they put that £2 cap on, so like...
Yeah, there's actually a very good graph in the Bus Back Better which had TfL buses, which, like the buses within London, which were not deregulated in 1986, and the buses outside of, in our weird smeared Berliner that we're describing, like not London, but also not the rest of the UK, so just England, and the impact on ridership and also of costs of that from that moment onwards, and you just see this enormous bifurcation as ridership went up, costs went and costs relatively didn't increase as quickly, and then the fares went up outside of London and ridership went down tremendously. It was really good that we destroyed the National Bus Company in the 80s.
Yes.
I'm really glad we did that. It was a very good idea.
Yeah, for all that stuff, we talked about it extensively in episode 147. So, go back and do your homework. What am I, a podcaster? But now between 2021 and 2024, 2025, because of this is accounting years, not calendar years, the Department for Transport spent in total in these 4 years just under £6 billion, of which £2 billion was directly related to getting the bus sector through COVID, which of course plummeted the numbers for
I
people
promise
using.
I promise I'm not going to interrupt as much as we go through, but this is everyone listening, I really want to emphasize this point. So that is basically 4 billion over 4 years.
That's 1 billion a year, roughly speaking, excluding COVID shit.
Can I just point out to everyone, that is fucking
Peanuts.
Nothing. That is genuinely less than rounding errors in the NHS budget. We are talking about absolutely nothing, and it is the most relied upon form of public transport in the country, and also, crucially, worth highlighting this, 50% of the bottom fifth of earners, so the bottom fifth of household incomes, people within those households, only 50% of them actually have access to a car in the first place. So buses are their only form of mobility beyond walking distance. And in many cases, those are people who actually don't find it that easy to walk around. So buses are their absolute lifeline. And for £1 billion, you sustain that system.
Well,
Again,
you sustain about 50% of it, because again, excluding the stuff for COVID, this funding, so the 1 billion per year, is about 50% of all revenue in the bus sector, because it's still privatized apart from Manchester now with the B network. The other 50% of that income is, tickets and some other stuff. However, between
so like 50%, which if you didn't have private operators, that would pay for more of that.
Yeah, so between 2005 and 2019, the total percentage of payments that the government chipped in was 43%. It's now 50%. So the reliance of private bus companies on government grants is growing bigger, not smaller. This also has to do with drops in people taking the bus and stuff, but it's still, we are paying more now for bus services into privatized bus systems as a percentage than we were between 2005 and 2019.
It's a pattern across the whole fucking economy, isn't it? Those companies like Stagecoach and First Group, fuck the both of yous, both Scottish, by the way, so David and I have particular rage and anger about those prick companies run by pricks for pricks.
Special shout out McGill's.
Yeah, Suitor, how you doing, you wanker? These companies realised they could just ramp up the percentage income through COVID, and they kept it that way. This ties directly into railways, by the way, because First Group, who is a particular enemy of mine, First Group also happened to be pushing desperately to run more open access rail operators to make profit out of the system post Great British Railways. This isn't a train episode, but so this cuts across public transport. These companies are desperate to leech off our public transport systems. There's a reason why they've been challenging things like bus franchising in court. We'll get to that later. These companies are desperate to strip money, and COVID gave them the excuse to ramp up the percentage of subsidy they just ate and turned into shareholder dividends. So that's why it's costing more.
Yeah, so again, for the full history, see episode 147, but currently, since Thatcher, most bus services are run by private companies like First Group, and what these private companies of course, are the profitable routes, where there's lots of passengers, lots of turnover, so they can sell lots of tickets. What they don't like is, the marginal but very important links, that connect towns to small villages where, as we were saying, the bus is the main connecting artery for people who are old, young, don't have a car, for whatever reason, can't drive, for them to experience the broader world.
Well, that's the other side of this, isn't it?
You just want to get fucking pissed and make your way down the high street. You want to get from the pub back home, and you live in any area. It doesn't even have to be rural. It might be just some suburb that doesn't have a fucking railway. You want to get slammed, and you want to get home without paying 50 quid for a taxi. Then the bus finishing at 6 p.m. or not even existing at all means that you can't do that. People have a right to get pissed.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. I mean, this is part of the whole thing as well. It's not just a cost thing where cars are too inaccessible, or even railways too inaccessible. This is the only option in so many fucking areas. It's regionally fucked as well. And it's regionally fucked because there's no investment in the fucking railways either. So
the thing that
you have to think about this together, for sure.
So the funding thing that happens is how it works is the Department for Transport gives money to local authorities, usually councils, but sometimes mayor or combined authorities or others, and with that money they are supposed to buy busing services in combination with these private companies that are just vampiric on it. However, and this is again from the report, quote, the Ministry for Housing, Communities and Local Government also provides non-ring-fenced funding, and remember that is non-ring-fenced because we'll get back to that later, to local authorities for buses. But the main pot comes through the DfT, and so in came the Bus Back Better strategy, which is the Boris Johnson thing. Which did provide, I want to get into it in a moment, but it provided $3 billion in extra funding, and it allowed for a number of things. The first thing was franchising, i.e., taking a regional or local bus network back into public ownerships. This is what allowed the Manchester B network to essentially come into existence. It was Boris Johnson legislation that made that possible, which is weird when you think about it, but that is how that worked.
We know that this is a thing. The Tories actually do the slightly better thing, and Labour don't, because they feel like they have to be the sensibles in the room. It's worth saying this is franchising brackets not quite so derogatory. When franchising in the railway world is like a little bit different. Like the language, there's a bit of a difference in what we actually mean. It's still having some pointless involvement of a private company, but in this case, it's more like in the railways we'd more like describe it as a concession. For anyone who's kind of like more familiar maybe with railway language, you'd kind of describe this as a concession in railway world, a bit like the London Overground being operated by a private company, which it is, but it is London Overground and everything is completely controlled by TfL, which of course is like, well, what's the fucking point in the private operator then? Well, yes, of course.
Yeah, quite.
But it's a way to drag liberals kicking and screaming into a good way to run a bus system.
However, the report makes it, the NAO report makes it pretty fucking clear that the costs associated with franchising your local network is essentially makes it only feasible for large metropoles, for combined mayoral authorities. Basically, if you're like a parish or like a small local council or just a town council, you will not have the budget to do this. Quote, DfT has estimated that the cost of the transition to franchising for a local transport authority, which is usually associated with the council, could be between 13 million and 22 million pounds, depending on the size and assuming it fully franchises the network. Most councils, trust me, do not have, give or take, 18 million pounds to spend to take their local routes back into
What's that like?
public
That's
ownership.
basically their entire social care budget. That's not money they can spend.
Manchester so far is the only city that has managed to enfranchise its services out of all local authorities in England. It cost Manchester, but to be fair, Greater Manchester is fucking enormous. It cost them about 135 million pounds, which is not nothing, but obviously the results seem so far to be quite good.
It's fuck all. It's one of these things central government, you caused this fucking mess in the 80s. Maybe you should pay for solving the problem yourselves.
And also I'd like to say, for, again, if a regional local authority, I don't know, Nottingham Council or something, which is a bit bigger, so let's say that would cost them 30 million pounds. It's that's less than the cost of Jeff Bezos's wedding to franchise their...
It's interesting you pick Nottingham because, of course, they do have municipal buses still. They actually held on to municipal buses like Reading.
Well, I mean, pick another city.
Sorry, your point still stands. I'm being facetious. Yeah, your point.
Yeah. So, and currently 5 other combined mayoral authorities are have completed a sort of assessment phase as to whether or not they can do this too. So, hopefully, in the future, we'll see at least a couple of the major conurbations do the same thing that Manchester has done and take these things back into public ownership. But again, we're talking about not very on a council level. You're talking about a lot of money. On the state level, you're talking about absolutely fucking nothing. It's just peanuts. You're talking about nothing. So,
and also, it's not just the money. I'm so sorry, I'm derailing you repeatedly.
No.
It's not just the money. It's the human resource. These councils, even Greater Manchester, which is probably doing among the better of the large municipal kind of authorities, the combined authorities, it's still, even for them, it's a massive drain on their staff to focus on, not least when you have the private bus companies suing suing Greater Manchester to try and stop it happening. All the resources then go into coordinating that, project managing that, let alone actually getting the thing moving. It's a huge resource drain to go through this process. And that's not saying it shouldn't happen, but it's saying councils are, firstly struggling to pay for their absolute legally mandated minimum service product like social care and education. They're also struggling to recruit anyone associated with anything to do with transport or highways or local kind of non-social care provision and services. It's extremely difficult to recruit in local authorities because there's no money there and they won't pay you anything. So you go and hide in a consultancy. So it's very, very difficult. Not even the money, even if the money was there, it's very, very difficult to coordinate this stuff because it's time consuming as hell. Which is why it's not happening instantly, which obviously it should be. So
this is one of the other things that the report mentions, because franchising is one thing that I think we've covered now, but the other thing is if you don't franchise, the Bus Back Better strategy demanded that local authorities create bus service improvement plans and enhanced partnerships. These were mandatory. They were like, either you franchise, which you probably can't, or you do this. And that was basically saying, like, both to the local authority and to the bus company, saying you guys need to actually work together now. And wildly, this is what I didn't know when the last time we did this, like mandating that the bus company and the local authority actually sit together and say, right, what can you offer? What are our needs? What do we prioritize, etc. This was the first time ever since Thatcher like privatized the services that like these people were demanded to sit like in the same room and talk to each other and make like a system work. Before that, it was all just in the hands of the
deregulated.
The privatized
the
bus
clues in the name.
thing.
It was completely deregulated. No one had to do fucking anything. The bus companies could do what the fuck they liked. And we've seen how that's solved problems for our country.
So, like, according to the NAO, according to the review, this strategy, while imperfect and also obviously suffering from a severe lack of money, did seem to be, you know, focusing work, making people work together, and slowly with, you know, varied results, making things better within a severely constrained financial envelope. So, like, it was not doing nearly as much or as fast as it should, but it was doing something, which is already more than you can usually say when, you know, you talk about Tory policy or now, you know, well, whatever Labour policy is, we'll get to that.
Tory policy again, yeah.
Another thing that I just thought was cool, and, you know, like, I do think sometimes you have to mention the things that are good, is that this strategy also made electric bus purchases priority. So now 50% of all buses in the UK are either on batteries or hydrogen, which is, you know, really cool. That's good.
Genuinely, really, it's a good news story. This is actually a very good thing. Okay, hydrogen buses, whatever. But particularly battery, like, this is really good news. It's massively improving air quality. And like, forget the carbon emissions for a minute. It's massively improving air quality in city centres. Like, genuinely a very, very important thing. And those buses are also cheaper to run. They're more reliable. Again, battery, not necessarily hydrogen. They are like much cheaper to run, and therefore you can buy more buses for the same money, or at least you can, so long as you're being funded to think ahead, you can plan a strategy for that, or the contract that look for the whole life of the buses is cheaper per bus than it was with the diesel one. So this is good.
This
also,
is really
by
good.
the way, a nascent technology that we, buses, a thing that we build in this country, could build more of and could export. It could be a thing that we could do as economic effort.
Yeah.
Sustainable transport as a drive for the economy.
Almost like you'd have to have like some kind of industrial strategy for that or something, but, you know, whatever. I
don't know anything about that. No.
But there's one more thing that, like, I wanted to mention, is that, like, council finances, we've talked about it on many episodes now, are extremely constrained because they have so many statutory duties, mainly related to child social care and social care overall. So, like, vast percentages of council budgets are being eaten by these statutory duties, and that means they will have less and less financial headroom, but they are also financially responsible for, like, paying privatized bus companies for the
subsidized routes, basically.
Yeah, for subsidizing the unprofitable routes that again are very important for local and regional cohesion and getting old people, you know, from their village to the shops, etc., etc. And as a practical effect, Gareth, you mentioned it before, it's like smaller or rural councils have like a 20 to 25% vacancy rate for transport officers. Because they can't afford one. So, like, even if you want to do something as a like a smaller council, you can't, because, like, you literally cannot afford to employ a person to create like a regional bus strategy or, like, you know, work with the bus companies. It's just left in the hands of general administration, not in the hands of, like, people who know what they're doing.
Yep.
But even like that's like rural ones, like that's 20 to 25%. Cities like Manchester still have like a 10% vacancy rate for transport officers. So, like, we don't have enough of them, and very often, even if we would have them, we can't pay them, let alone like the specialists you would need, like lawyers and people like that you would need to negotiate like franchising your privatized bus network. So like we have a real staffing
at the
problem
time,
with this as well.
So in the 60s, at the peak of kind of local devolution, mid to late 60s even, all these staff were employed by councils. They're employed by city councils. They're employed by the big council. Selneck, for example, employed an enormous army of these people because they were doing things like designing the entire fucking motorway network of the area, like among many other things, greatly successfully designing subway systems in the case of Manchester, all sorts of things that actually needed to be done. Then councils were attacked relentlessly. All of these people now work for design consultancies and consult, like ones I used to work for before shenanigans ensued. And the consultancies can do a few things. Firstly, they can pay them more. Secondly, because they're mixing them across areas, they can kind of sustain them for longer and provide better working conditions, arguably, although RIP to all the railway ones who've been made redundant recently. And so also the consultancies, particularly the more management-y, multinational consultancy types, can like do all the rule bending and rule twisting to get past all the. So they've learned all the tricks and tips to get around all the planning rules, kind of completely sucking the skills out of local authorities, often indeed running rings around local authorities for the benefit of developers, etc. So like all these people who would have previously worked for the public sector are now working for private consultancies. And you will never, well, not without radical change and decent funding, will you pull those people back into local authorities, And the fact that even cities like Manchester, where there is a little bit of a pull factor, because you do have a little bit more of a team around you, you can start thinking more strategically. There is a lot of exciting stuff going on transport-wise in Manchester. Even there, they're still not filling, as you say, what is that, 9-10% vacancy rate? It's still not filling those roles. It's just, yeah. Whoa. So what about COVID? I'm sure COVID fixed all this.
Well, COVID like made a lot of things worse because like when the first lockdown happened, bus journeys crashed by like 90%, which is to be expected, and like that's why the government gave everything so much more.
Yeah, it was 95% for rail.
Yeah. So like, and it also like apart from like it caused a sustained crash in numbers, but the more important thing, like two more important things happened, is it threw off a lot of the plans that were supposed to happen under this strategy because councils were obviously not focused on improving their bus services while the bus services weren't being used, and they had lockdown problems to deal with. Which is completely fair. Again, the government spent £2 billion, which we know. But the more important thing is that, like post-COVID, the number of bus passengers still hasn't recovered. I think they definitely have, or like even grown past COVID for trains, but for buses they have not. And the report doesn't make clear why that would be. My sort of instinctual guess is like, the people who could afford it bought a car because they still needed to get around. They couldn't go on the bus anymore. And like maybe they do car sharing. Maybe, a sibling or a friend drove them to the shops, and that's sort of a new pattern, and that created the drop essentially. So like, but basically
also working from home and stuff. Like
exactly, yeah.
A lot of jobs, despite the constant fucking moaning of every dickhead with a telegraph column, some jobs have decided, fuck it, we'll just do remote now.
Well, it's interesting actually because I've got, I go through every now and then. I pull these up in RailNatter, and I have the stats. I have the DFT stats in front of me, right? The thing is, so in RailNatter, I've been looking at this data fairly frequently when it pops up, still being updated by the DFT. It's a genuinely useful data resource. Buses were ahead of rail in terms of recovery until kind of about a year ago, and then there was this split that happened. So it's quite interesting. Like bus recovery was ahead of rail recovery, and like pretty consistently running alongside it until about a year ago. At which point, buses just took this nosedive and have, and have been kind of pretty separate from rail at this point. And then we're in a position now where, kind of in the last sort of, much more recent, the last few months, we've seen, or the last 6 months even, we've seen rail is, by the way, when I'm talking about recovery, I'm talking in terms of ridership numbers as a percentage of pre-COVID, the equivalent pre-COVID numbers, right? So rail is at and way above 100% now. So, the railway is fuller than they have ever been. Cars, usage of cars and taxis is actually below 100%, still not recovered from pre-COVID levels. So that's still not recovered, but way down at sort of still not quite even 90% is bus usage. So we've seen this situation where the recovery for buses was great until we got to kind of the middle of 2024, and there was just this divergence, this sort of split, and so yeah, I'm wondering whether actually it's some of the impacts of some of the austerity 2.0 stuff that's been kicking in.
Yeah,
Some of the more energy cost changes and stuff. Some of the more recent big macro effects. So actually, COVID recovery, the COVID stuff, the changes in travel patterns. I don't think it's that so much as it's more recent big macro effects that have resulted in the worse off accessing work less. Because, as we say, buses generally are used by people who are lower down the income scale. So I think it's changing working patterns and more people being out of work as a result of some of this, and also potentially the effects of long COVID as well impacting people. So it's interesting. There's this. I don't know the full science of that, but I'd love to know more. Nerds, right in.
So overall, past COVID, we spent about $4 billion over 4 years, and yet there has been a overall 9% drop in bus use outside London, but a 9% drop in passengers, but there's also been a 15% reduction in services available. Once again, the reductions in rural areas have been the biggest again, so 21% reduction in commercial routes since COVID, and more local authority financial support is constantly needed to top it up to maintain the remaining lines. So rural areas, smaller areas become harder hit. If you're wondering why, if you live in a small town, there's one bus a day or two buses a day now, where there even 2 years ago, 5 years ago, there used to be 4 or 8. This is why. It's because there's less people riding them, and the privatized bus companies don't want to provide those services anyway because they're not profitable to them. And you are therefore reliant on ever more stretched council funding. This is a very nasty, vicious cycle that keeps happening.
So that paragraph, that story you've just told, is one of the major factors in explaining politics in the UK right now.
Yes,
right?
yeah,
because
100%.
You talked about the localized effect of buses is that it's downwards fucking doom loop of fewer people traveling the bus, more subsidy needed, so more bus services get cut, so fewer people entertain the use of buses at all, which means that fewer people are taking the buses. But even if you step back from just the bus doom loop, well, obviously that means that parts of the country, rural and not just rural, but these semi-rural, the kind of the in-between places, as I've described them before, the place like Consett and fucking, some of these kind of in-betweeny places, right, that rely on the buses are the only, public transport option. And if those become decimated or unreliable, or, the frequencies drop to be, you've got a bus every 2 hours, which might as well not be a fucking bus for most parts, in a densely populated country like the UK. That means that people aren't going to live in that area. It's not just necessarily that they're going to choose to drive, but actually you might just
move.
People, particularly young people, and the sorts of demographics that keep an area alive, fuck off somewhere where they actually have options, whether it's options to get to work or just options to move around, not using a car, and therefore you're talking about communities dying, quite literally communities dying. And that makes people feel isolated, lonely, frustrated that the state is abandoning them. And so what they're going to do, they're going to vote for the only people offering change.
Yeah, and also they're going to stick on Facebook because they can't go anywhere anymore.
Yep.
That's how that fucking Tory prick got elected in Consett. Because one of his pledges was that he was going to reopen the fucking, extend the metro from, Newcastle to Consett. And he was going to do it by putting it along the old coal railway that don't walk.
Yeah, and you know what? That's
not wide enough for 2 tracks.
I mean, it isn't. But again, offering something, candidates who offer something will likely be candidates who offer nothing. That's a whole other thing. That's another discussion for another day. But politically, this is why buses are really important, because actually they are the thing that really make the difference to the political landscape in the UK.
Yeah, it's like every politician always bangs on about fucking potholes, but bus services are at least as important, maybe more important, given the volume of people who use them, and how bad it is when people no longer have them, how visible it is in their lives.
Yeah, and as you say, we're talking about the doom loop of communities. We're talking about communities being strangled to death by deregulation of buses, essentially.
Yeah. I mean, what also
that's kind of the ultimate trajectory.
What also hasn't helped is like the overall increase in fuel costs. So like it's now 12% higher than it was over 4 years, and also wages are almost 30% higher. But then like bus drivers and support staff were criminally underpaid. So like
fucking good, man.
That's really good. Like that's actually absolutely awesome. But again, and this is not me saying like bus drivers should have less money, but like it comes again in the context of ever more pressure on council budgets. So a 30% increase in salary is essentially like a 15% increase. If you split it out 50-50, it is a 15% increase in costs for the local council as well. So my answer is not, don't pay the bus drivers. My answer is fund your councils properly and just take all this shit in-house. But,
it's also recruiting. It's, as with everything, the demographic of people who become bus drivers. It's the same. The same with HGV drivers. It's difficult work. There are lovely bus drivers out there, and it's like it's every now and then you find one that really gives you joy, and it's a really important role. It's one of these things. These people are key workers. They're critical to the functioning of our society, not treated as such. But it's difficult work. It's not necessarily shift work, which is shitty anyway. Like, it's hard work. And therefore, again, this is why salaries have rightly increased, but they need to increase more just to get the drivers' bums on seats to actually have enough drivers to run the already skill-lethal service we have. So, all this doom loop, it's an enormous doom cycle downwards. Sorry, I'm derailing us repeatedly.
But this is very important. They are super important.
There's no industry that is, like, more desperate to advertise itself than bus drivers. Like, so many buses that I see just have a big fucking advert screaming, we will pay you 35 grand or some shit to start driving a bus, and then it'll go up. And it's like, no other fucking job would offer that kind of pay on a big fucking billboard, because none of them are that fucking desperate, really. Like, well, also none of them will fucking probably pay that well on entry, to be fair, but like, it's still fucking ridiculous that the industry's in the state it's in, especially when you factor in that this is effectively a free money factory for private companies. Like, they should be able to just get the staff in.
Yep.
Yeah.
No,
so
absolutely. It's sorry, go on, Rob.
Yeah. So like this. The government, or while this stuff was going on in the last few years, the government and the Department for Transport specifically did recognize that this was a problem. So what they did is they agreed another £1.2 billion to support councils with their bus services, and to do like these various improvement plans as conceived by the Bus Back Better strategy. However, this was done leveling up style, which meant it was on a competitive basis. So like everybody had to submit a plan, and only the best and coolest ones were like taken forward, even though councils would spend a lot of money, on consultants to write these plans.
Fucking treasury.
Yeah, and leveling up. It's a combination of the two. Like, leveling up, we've talked about this on various podcasts before. Like, this is one of the main things about leveling up is it would be like, yes, there's more money, but all councils have to, like, compete for this limited pot. And sometimes they would, or like on the regular, would spend hundreds of thousands, if not millions, on these proposals to bring, what was it again, a robotics university to Blackpool or some shit like that. And then, like, but everybody else who lost out didn't get anything, but still had sunk hundreds of thousands into these bids. Now, they wouldn't be as big for bus services specifically, but this leveling up style approach to getting funding is just fucked, essentially. Yeah.
So,
not that's specific.
So what's
yeah. So my question is like. Is all right. So this is the problem at the local level, and then the bigger point that the report also makes. Like, I mean, they don't put it in this way, but what the fuck are they doing over at the Department for Transport, who are supposed to like provide guidance and direction, and dare I use the word strategy to point the way forward. And
there's
from
a lot
what I
of
understand,
thinking people over in the DFT, isn't there, Gareth?
Yeah.
Yeah. Look, it's funny, isn't it? Because the DFT, there are a lot of people I actually know and work hard in the DFT. But the trouble with the DFT is that it's a corridor from Treasury to
councils,
treasuries wanting to not spend money. Like, the DFT is basically just a corridor that Treasury people walk back and forth through. Like, the DFT, as wonderful as DFT's plans might be, DFT is not structured properly. Like, it's very much siloed into, like, road and rail, and that's not useful for buses, because the road people want to build motorways, the rail people want to, like say they're doing sexy stuff like High Speed 2 and buses don't get a look in, when actually it should not be split like that. It should be split around types of movement so that you have like long distance travel, local travel, freight, and then therefore split it that way. We should, you shouldn't have a minister for rail. Sack that guy. That's another story. But you shouldn't have a minister for rail. You shouldn't have a minister for local transit. You shouldn't have a minister for like roads or whatever it is. You should have it split by the types of movement we're talking about. So you're kind of like mode agnostic. And therefore, you'd think better about how buses fit into that story. And so there is a bit of a structural challenge, as well as the fact that DFT are preoccupied with rail reform at the moment. They're preoccupied with having those conversations with Treasury. Treasury are currently doing a very bad job of defining what GBR is going to be. They want it to just, and even DFT, to be honest, is various sources of mine, this is not a rail episode, I know, are worried about what GBR is going. But anyway, the point is that's sucking a lot of oxygen out of the room as well in DFT. So then this stuff about buses, which is very important, is continuing to not get the attention it needs.
Yeah. So this is also the sense that you get from the NAO report that like the DFT just, apart from the bus back better strategy, which was an actually sort of vaguely coherent document, but that is no longer government policy. That was cancelled when Labour came in. They just haven't written a new policy yet, which is part of the problem we have. Part of the other problem is the way that DFT's funding works. This is a quote from the report. DFT's funding has been split across 13 different grants with different administration conditions and timescales, increasing complexity and costs. Recent funding allocations have largely been short-term, which limits local authorities' ability to invest in effective improvements. So what basically happens is you can get a grant for bus stuff, but only for like a year or 2 years. Not like a 5-year or a 10-year cycle, so you can, do what Manchester did or something. This is an example from the report. Wiltshire County Council staff told us that the capital funding DFT had allocated in December 2024 for the fiscal year 25-26 will be hard to spend effectively. This is despite planning to spend it on bus shelter improvements, which they describe as one of the very simplest things they could do with the money. So even something as simple as putting a roof over the bus shelters and like putting in some lights to make it safer and nicer is already hard to do within the 1 year time limit set by the DFT. So if they can't do that, imagine how hard it is with these kinds of funding restraints to like franchise your local bus network.
Do you know what? And I know we're going to talk more about this and more, and the fucking morass gets deeper and deeper. But I'm just going to say it now. The way that you solve this and some of the problems you're going to talk about in a second are taking all of this money away from DFT and just making it fixed long-term allocations to city regions and large. This shit should not be with the DFT. The DFT should have no business in any control over buses whatsoever, other than doing things like saying we will fund targets to hit percentages of electric buses.
Or make a big national strategy,
But they should not be allocating any money for operation. That should just be completely devolved, and it should also, by the way, that doesn't mean Treasury should have control of it either. The point is that the money should go nowhere near fucking Westminster. That it should be all of it permanently fixed for a long-term period to the cities and the regions so that they can do this stuff. They can do this stuff without having to pester DFT. Free up DFT to do some of the other strategic stuff that it should be doing, by the way.
Or use DFT for like the big strategic stuff to make sure that when you arrive with the train, there's like a bus waiting for you to take you to your final destination, which is one of those things that living here in Switzerland, that's what they're extremely good at. Like most of the time, if you want to get to like a remote location, like you turn up at the train station and then 10 minutes later, your bus will leave to take you to your endpoint. Like it's one of those things.
Your bus or fucking snooze span or fucking like funicular to like the two houses or whatever the fuck's going on. Yes, we know you have tact plan. We know that you know that your public transport system works marvelously. Fuck's sake.
It's fucking sick.
Shut the fuck up, Rob.
And the other thing, of course, that you can't do with these super short funding cycles,
which by the way, we fucking had the Northeast had this. Tyne-Wear Metro did this. They had that. They had what Switzerland had. The buses were like Jamie, your territory, right? The buses were integrated into the metro. The buses didn't go into the city centre. They met hub stations at the edge of the metro system. They were all timetabled in. So the buses, so the Consett thing you just talked about, you didn't need the metro to go up to Consett because the buses were completely integrated into the overall system. So that it was all timetabled together. It all worked beautifully. Like we did do that. How was that done? It's because the passenger transport executive that Barbara Castle created was completely self-contained and run and funded, basically, fixed long-term funding for the transport authority that is now called Nexus, that was the Tyne and Wear passenger transport executive. Like that was we did it. We could do it. We could do the Swiss thing. We did do it. And now we can't.
Yeah, well, because it was communism, I assume.
Yeah, it was.
Yeah.
Switzerland,
well known for its communism.
Newcastle and count like you can now like not see from the smidge coming through all the buses that now compete with the metro for no reason in the middle of fucking Newcastle. Yeah, great.
So like
fully automated luxury cantonism now.
Yes.
Yes. Yeah.
So, again, quote from the report, DfT's only long-term grant to bus operators has not fundamentally been reformed for many years, preventing DfT from targeting spending more effectively. Instead, the Department of Transport added conditions to the design of a new grant to influence activity. So, like, what they also haven't done is, like, they still keep paying out first group and everybody on these long cycles, but they don't seem to, like, demand much of them. Or like say, you have to adjust to these targets quickly. So like councils get 1 year cycles, but first group gets like a 5 year bus like funding cycle, which is an interesting sort of mismatch you'd think between how to effectively manage demand and create new routes and all that stuff.
It actively makes one of them reactive to the other, and unfortunately, the one that's reactive to the other is the local authority one.
Yeah. And David, you actually highlighted the problem here earlier, which is that operating buses is a license to print fucking money. Mm-hmm. And the bus companies, the big bus companies, remember, like deregulation happened, and there was this vision that we're going to have 1,000 wonderful, locally, cooperatively run individual little bus operators that are perfect for the local. They're basically run by the same parents who run the local playgroup would run the buses or whatever. And obviously, what happened was they were all immediately merged into enormous fucking geographic monopolies. Well, actually, they weren't geographic monopolies because they would compete with each other. Fucking Ancoats Road in Manchester had there was fucking
the bus wars.
With fucking double-decker buses. Stagecoach and First Group as some of the two key offenders. Formed of. Up where I was, GRT, Grampian Regional Transport, ex-National Bus Company, where I grew up, becoming First Group. These are evil companies. Stagecoach and First Group are evil companies, and they have been they exist because of bus deregulation, because it was a fucking license to print money, and they are now enormous, powerful lobbyists against anything that will be usefully positive for public transport, because they want to keep eating the money sandwich over and over and over again.
Yeah, so fundamentally, like what is happening over at the Department for Transport, despite being a corridor to the Treasury, is they love getting involved where they, as Gareth, you said, like they love being involved with like small bean decisions where they should be, and tying these fundings to these very specific outputs. But those outputs, while maybe individually like praiseworthy, do not link together into a broader strategy. And while the department does have like a ton of data about like bus routes, users share, like users, all that kind of stuff. They have a ton of data. Quote from the report, it has not brought these databases together to track what outcomes it is achieving with its funding and to determine how it could better target improvements. Similarly, DfT has not determined a core set of national metrics and indicators to track outcomes across the bus sector as a whole to judge whether the sector is achieving what matters for passengers. So we have all this data.
Exactly the same as for rail.
Yeah, this is one of the reasons I asked you to come on.
Yeah, this is a key problem with the DfT, and this is a behavioural cultural thing. If you have an inability to do anything major and strategic because Treasury and Number 10 have all the power and hold all the purse strings, then if you are someone, let's assume the benefit of the doubt, you are someone who does care about public transport, and you're employed in the DfT, you're going to fiddle in the stuff you do have access to, which is small bean, non-monetary, or existing grants and tinkering around the edges. You are going to tinker in that stuff because that's all you have reach of, And so that does result in the micromanagement, because DFT isn't autonomous enough and have its own powers enough to do anything meaningful at a strategic level. You get anywhere near the reason why the commitment for rail and for bus, there aren't the key mission-driven incentives to go, this is what mode share we want for public transport versus road and versus air. The reason that as soon as you make that commitment, then it's a stick to hit Treasury with, because Treasury then have to fund things to achieve those commitments. And that's why Treasury will never let these commitments actually be made. Treasury will actively kneecap any attempt to create a grand unified theory of bus, or better than that, because buses and trains and all of the public transport system need to be not thought of as in silos, but together. You will never get a grand unified theory of here's how we understand where the public transport is improving, because Treasury will always, and Number 10 will, on its behalf, will always step in and stop it from happening. They will stamp on the snake. I don't know where that analogy came from. I don't know what that means.
This paragraph essentially made me like the bus joker, essentially. Like, traffic congestion, which has returned to pre-pandemic levels, is reducing the viability and performance of bus services in urban areas.
Build more roads. Just build
congestion.
More roads, one more lane, bro.
No. Congestion is a key barrier to improving bus services, naturally, right? If you as it increases journey times and worsens punctuality, correct? Which in turn encourages people to use cars, while bus usage is not returned. Yeah, well, because people are like, why should I take the bus? It doesn't get me anywhere. I'll just take the car. I'll also see in traffic that they don't make that association.
I just get a fucking train then.
While bus usage has not returned to pre-pandemic levels, the Department for Transport estimates that traffic congestion is back to those levels in 2019. They have identified that to break this cycle, improvements to infrastructure are needed that prioritize the flow of bus traffic, so bus lanes, etc. Rural and suburban areas also face a cycle of decline where services are withdrawn as passengers numbers fall, which encourage more car use, leading to further falls in passengers and more services being withdrawn. And also because there are more cars on the road, because you've withdrawn the bus services, the more the buses are late, the more people get fed up with it, the more they buy a car, the more they, the buses get delayed because everybody's sitting in the same fucking thing. Without capital improvements, i.e.
That's not what the quote said, by the way, everyone. Rob is embellishing.
Yeah.
Just for the benefit of listeners.
without
the National
capital...
Audit Office, well based is not that based.
Yeah.
Without capital improvements, such as priority bus lanes or revenue schemes to improve riderships, the department forecasts that the sector would become financially unsustainable at the current service levels, requiring operators to reduce or withdraw more services or request further public support. And if they reduce or withdraw more services, that will, of course, increase the number of cars on the roads in urban areas, which will lead to more traffic jams, which will lead to less people sitting in the buses because the bus is always late, and so on and so forth until this fucking island sinks into the fucking sea.
So do you know how I got these bus tickets? Before Rob really fucking loses the plot. This is, so anyone who knew anything about anything could have told you in the early 80s, as bus deregulation was being kind of written out and how they were going to do it, that this is exactly what would happen. Just as anyone who knew anything about the railways could tell you that, as the Railways Act was rushed through in the early 90s, that it would create the conditions for its own demise 30 years later, and hence why the franchise system has collapsed for the railways. So this is what happens if you pitch public services like this. This is exactly what fucking happened. This is not some accident of COVID. This isn't COVID that's caused this.
No.
Accident of like Britain. This is exactly what was always going to happen when deregulation was initiated. This is always what was going to happen. This was just absolutely inevitable.
Yeah. All that COVID did is like strap rocket boosters to an existing terrible fucking problem.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. I mean, the government, because this is the government, has effectively identified the doom loop. And what they won't ever grasp is that, like, the longer you take to do something about it, the harder it's going to be to fix it. Like, say at this point now where they're saying, okay, the solution here is bus lanes. Bus lanes will only because you're not going to expand the roads in any way, and again, expand the roads is bad in the first place anyway, so please do keep that in mind as I say this, you're just going to create further congestion with those bus lanes, because the traffic that is there, which is already in a heightened state, will have less places to go. Now, you may say, that's an incentive. It's not really an incentive because people have already spent the money on the cars. They've got the cars to pay for the cars. The cars are a status symbol. It's a much harder sell to convince people to start using the fucking buses again. So, the further on we leave this, the less access we have to fucking, like, you know, actual solutions which would bring us towards people should use the bus. It just becomes more and more difficult the longer we leave it.
And this is... Yeah, and so, sorry, David, I'm just shouting all over you, but basically, like, this is one of the situations where we're seeing things that should be bus getting proposed as rail, because you know there are several proposals in the UK right now that are being, build a railway here, build a railway there, where it's like, well, actually, no, that shouldn't be a railway. That's better as a bus. But the trouble is exactly as you described, David. We're at the point now where there isn't an easy way to break out the doom loop, and actually building dedicated public transport infrastructure in the form of a train is the only way to actually escape that situation. But can we build railways in this country? No, we can't.
Well, and it's also that, like, part of the problem is also that if you're a local council and you decide to build in the center of town or even approaching the center of town, like priority bus lanes, then like the Top Gear crowd will like immediately start voting for reform and demanding your head because, you know, buses are for poor people. And there's a whole episode that at some point I want to do about like the psychosis of cars in the UK, because it's such a weird, like, I think you know, there's that. I wouldn't know what to read essentially to get into that, but there is
Google anything that says motonormativity. Google motonormativity or car brain. There are some genuinely good academic papers and some fun stuff written, and a few people you could get as good guests actually for that. There we are. It's more editor's note, but listeners, you're getting this one. So that's listeners to you as well. If you're interested, listeners, you can Google motonormativity, and AI will send you in the wrong direction. So then what you need to do is to go to DuckDuckGo and search motonormativity, and you'll get the right paper. Right. So sorry. Yes.
So what's happened
with that in mind?
So what's happened since is like, okay, so like I said, the bus back better thing is no longer government policy because Labour came in and sort of, I don't know, just tossed it overboard. I don't know why it is no longer, but I assume they were just like, well, that
because there was going to be an integrated transport strategy that Louise Haig was pushing for. Do you remember her? Oh.
No, she had a phone, so I hate her.
She was northern and young and had a different coloured hair. Therefore, she was not acceptable to be in government.
The one thing that we do know is that like the Department for Strategy for Transport hasn't updated its bus strategy. I don't know if they will get around it at some point, but you know, under Heidi Alexander, I very much doubt it because again, buses are not a priority for this government. The way you know it, by the way, is I went and checked, is the word bus appears exactly twice in the 2024 election manifesto, both in the same paragraph, and only says that Labour will lift the ban on municipal ownership. So I assume this is like a sort of a step above the franchising model, but I don't really understand what sort of practical difference that would make for like people to, you know.
It's better actually. Municipal ownership
is better.
It's a better model.
Yeah.
But it's another classic situation of Labour just saying a thing that had already been enacted. Like the Tories had already essentially done that. So
did it actually say bus twice in the manifesto, or was that just appearing in the word business?
No,
I'm pretty sure it was just
No, I document searched the entire manifesto for the word bus.
You put it into ChatGPT.
There were 84 mentions, about 70 of which were business. 12 were abuse, mainly in the immigration section, if you're curious. And there were 2 mentions of the word bus in the transport section. So, yeah, I counted.
A reminder, just the thing I said earlier, that buses are one of the key reasons for the general political decline in the UK. 2 mentions in a manifesto. 2 mentions.
There's one more thing I wanted to mention. This is back to the report, is that in 2023, and there's no reason to assume last year was different, people with disabilities took 25% less trips across all public transport modes, so including trains, but specifically for buses, like wheelchair access is a priority. So like a lot of bus stations and bus stops have a way for people in wheelchairs to get on the bus, but visual or hearing impairments are currently not a priority or like something that bus providers are like supposed to take into account, nor are there like rules in place to make sure bus stops are like accessible and locatable for people with visual or hearing impairment. So like this is another one of these things where like, you know, if you're blind, you're not driving a bloody car, but like maybe it would be good if we like make the bus stops better accessible, and then the buses to also, you know, announce loudly and clearly the stop that's coming up, etc., just so people with, you know, disabilities can fucking use them.
None of this is none of this is beyond the fucking wit of man. It's all solved problems.
Yeah, but I thought
it's a good job we're not. It's a good job the government's not just like snuck through by like some weird chess shenanigans. You know, their welfare bill. It's definitely not going to immiserate even more disabled people. By 75 votes, so tremendous.
No, but you know, I have it on good faith that there will be an independent commission that will do a report in 5 years, and then everything will be different. You know, Pinky's fucking cross. Anyway, I thought we shouldn't leave on a usual note of depression. There were a few things in the report towards the end which I actually really liked that were like just kind of good replicable things that like some councils were doing that seem, you know, also within the budget constraints, seem very doable like in the short term. And I thought I'd just give you 3 of them because, you know, it is important to show that despite everything, local authorities, you know, I'm not going to say the bus companies, but local authorities are actually trying to make this system work with all the difficulties that we've just been talking about. Nottingham City Council is using interactive technology, interactive, so not AI, just, you know, fucking spreadsheets or whatever, between the bus and traffic signals at busy road junctions to help give buses priority over other traffic. They scored the joint highest for punctuality in the latest bus satisfaction survey because they're
that's
simply
a municipal bus company, one of the oldest in the country.
But like a good thing, like to make sure the traffic signals when it's busy prioritize buses. That's really good. That's important shit. Second one, as part of its bus service improvement plan, the City of York Council has identified bus stops where curb, paving, seating, lighting, and information needed to be upgraded to improve accessibility for everybody, and delivered over 240 individual improvements. So that's small shit, but that also means that like the bus stop is functional and, you know, has a roof and a light.
Like
and
my bus stop that I get the bus from has a countdown timer finally, so I can see the fucking number 6 bus, which is one of the most ridiculous buses in the whole of the fucking country. Zigzags across from where I am, but I can now see whether it's actually going to arrive on time, and therefore potentially think about using it to get into town. It's
small shit, but it's so
have positive improvements.
It's small beer. And again, like back to where we started, that like we've in the last 4 like sort of fiscal years, we funded the private bus companies to the tune of £1 billion per annum, and it's like, okay, so if we just like, you know, took all of this in private ownership, in public ownership, and then built some better bus stops and like put countdown timers on it and, you know, put a light in it. I'm not saying it's free, but it's certainly eminently affordable for a resource that is so critical.
It is extremely difficult to overstate how much every penny spent on buses gives an absolutely spectacular economic return.
Yeah.
It's difficult to overstate that. Government should like 5x their fucking, that's the language that this lot understand, should be fucking 5xing their funding of buses. Like, spend $5 billion a year on buses and you would like basically turn the country around. And you wouldn't even, to be honest, you wouldn't even be able to spend that much. You couldn't spend that much. Buses are so cheap. It's all so cheap to do this stuff. Like, funding buses to be £1 capped fare would be like an extra 900 million, like 800 million quid a year or something. Actually, no, it's not. It's £1 billion a year to make buses free across the whole country. And I don't necessarily think that's the right thing to do for various weird, like, it's useful to, that's another story. But basically, like, even if you made them free, but even if you just reduced it so there's a £1 cap on bus fares, you would be able to, like, that would cost nothing extra. And you barely anything, again, rounding errors in the overall UK budget, 32 billion a year on defense. Remember?
Yeah,
You could spend that on like it's just a spectacular level of bus lanes. Making every single bus stop in the entire country accessible would cost you probably £2 billion in total. We're talking about nothing.
It's like the cost of, how much are they again? 150 million, I think, each. So 16. It's like the cost of 16 to 17 F-35s, and you could have
yeah.
That's, and then we wouldn't use them in war crimes. So yet another bonus.
Yeah.
The last one, there were a few which were also just councils that had just put a QR code at a bus stop so you could see a countdown thing and what services were coming in the next hour. Just something that you could point your phone at, it will tell you, fine, done. Also easy. The last one I wanted to mention, which is again, this super simple shit, but that I do think is a direct consequence of this Bus Back Better strategy of strategic planning between councils and the private bus companies. Leicestershire County Council and Leicester City Council have flexi bus tickets that can be used across 5 different bus operators with integrated timetables shown at bus stops. Again, I don't think there should be 5 different operators in and around Leicester. That's idiocy. But ticky-tacky stuff like that is neither hard nor difficult. It just requires that you have a transport officer or two at the council level, and that you sit around the table while these bricks are in existence and say, right, we want to at least make sure that the people here can hop from one service to another. It's simple shit, but so there are small things that, while we would like to nationalize everything tomorrow, this you could just do off the bat and is very important.
It's sticking plaster shit, but it will at least help people in
the immediacy
way, and that's
in the next year or something.
Do it. Yeah.
And it's no regrets. It's even if we do fully reverse deregulation, we still need the bus stops. So it's not like you're
throwing money away.
That investment is absolutely no regrets investment. You've made the bus stops nicer. Things. I had chats with a couple of city councils, trying to work out how they could improve the use of their public transport systems within the current legal frames. And I was saying, look, go and spend £4,500 on stickers of your council logo to put on the buses, and that will genuinely improve ridership because people will feel greater ownership over that system. You just go and you say to First Group, we will stop paying your subsidy if you don't let us just put these stickers these nice stickers of a little logo we've created to represent our local transport services on your bus. There are so many things you can do that improve many rail natters. Rail natter, by the way, covers buses. It's within me remit. So we've done buses a few times. There are lots of things that you can do that are. And again, I just want to stress the cheapest fucking shit imaginable, and you make enormous difference to places. Just really, really important to emphasize the fact that buses are one of the easiest and cheapest interventions. Anything that improves buses are some of the easiest and cheapest interventions you can make to improve lots of different metrics, including health, isolation, access to public services. It makes public service provision easier, more cost effective. It makes everything better. There are no downsides to it. It is, other than the fact that you're throwing money at the private operators' shareholder dividends while they're still privatized. But
even while you're doing that, this is you're talking about especially on the UK state level, you're talking about pennies. Shit that you can find behind the sofa cushions of the UK state expenditure. This is something you should absolutely do. And the thing that I get from this whole report is this strategy, atrocious though the name is, was actually it wasn't fixing everything properly, but it was at least pointing a bunch of things in sort of roughly the right direction. From everything that I could...
briefly got lobby journalists to talk about buses.
Yeah.
A thing that they don't fucking know anything about or care about. Even though it,
never
honestly,
stopped them before.
Yeah, well, yeah.
but I can't see, or maybe I haven't looked. I did my homework, but maybe I haven't seen it. But I don't see this Labour government at all interested in making this work or making it a priority to make it work. Because not to set you off on a 30-minute thing, but I don't get the sense from Heidi Alexander that she actually wants to fix transport in the UK. Like that, she's just
the reason they're making a big deal about Great British Railways and the nationalisation is because, it isn't particularly.
No, it's
and also even if it was, it's step 1 of 100, as we've talked about here, and so on, so on, so on. Like, it's a big thing they get to say. There's a lot of, it's a vibes-based press release machine without them actually necessarily having to do or spend anything. And so it means, things like actually solving buses requires them to think and do stuff. And remember, like, one of the big arguments of all the FBP pro Starmerite weirdos is, well, there's so much we have to fix that the Tories are broken. We can't do everything. It's like, no, yes, you fucking can. Do you have any idea how many people are employed by the government and the civil service? Like, you can do all this shit at once. The whole point is you can. The whole point of a state is that you can do more than one fucking thing at once. So do more than one fucking thing at once and make buses one of your key fucking priorities. Sorry, I get very angry about this stuff.
Yeah, but what they've done is they've taken your £4,500 stickers idea and applied it to a national government-wide fucking system. Like, we'll do GBR, that's fine. Okay, look, there's a nice fucking new bit of livery on the train next to whatever other bullshit's already on it. There you go, we did it. No, don't ask about all the money that we actually do fucking have. This was cheap.
Yeah.
And like, it's so... buses are so cheap to fix. I just want that to be like, everyone listening to this, like, this is not in any way a case of... And also, every single pound you spend is going round and round in circles, because improving buses just instantly means that you're improving economies locally because people can just move around more. So this is the instant economic improvements come from chucking money at buses. Every pound you spend, you're getting back. I think even the NAO or possibly Bus Back Better acknowledges that it's like £7. Every pound you spend on buses is like £7 back into the economy. It's some massive number, even though bearing in mind that's like probably like a conservative estimate given Treasury rules. So this is good. Buses are great. We fucking love buses. This is a pro bus guest on a pro bust. I mean, also pro bust. Pro bus.
Put the voice away.
Podcast also. Yeah, that's it. Oh, crikey. Buses. Hooray.
Yeah. Well, I think on that note.
Okay. Cool, Gareth. Thank you.
I've actually got one quick bit of like breaking news.
Is Keir Starmer dead?
No, not sure. Like, if anyone else fucking remember the guy, but Jimmy Swaggart, who was like a big televangelist in the 80s, has died.
Oh, good.
And I mean, obviously, I repeat myself because I said televangelist, but he was a fucking prick.
Yeah, he was a massive cunt.
Yeah.
Oh, that's good. Jamie, I'm sorry I depressed you shouting about buses so much.
Gareth, thanks very much for coming on again, mate.
Always an absolute pleasure. It's always fun to shout about things with you lot. An honest delight as ever. Thanks, Jamie.
You want to shout about RailNatter a bit? I listened to the...
I should plug my shit.
Listen, I watched the Designing Glasgow Metro System video, which I obviously I did, and it was very interesting. Really enjoyed that.
It's RailNatter. It's a podcast, but also the podcast version is now much more clipped and cropped because I have a person who now does that for me, which is scary and frightening.
That must be nice.
And he's constantly telling me things like, "What the fuck are you doing? Shut up," which is quite reasonable to be fair. But if you want all the stuff that's all the juicy fun stuff that doesn't get cut out, then you can watch. It's watchable. You can see my sweaty face, and as David says, you can also watch me make railway maps that are actually genuinely realistic and important, and viable, and make things better. That's RailNatter every Wednesday evening at 8 p.m. on YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts afterwards. But there's other shit as well. I'm doing more other shit around that too. So. More little videos and stuff, and so that's it. RailNatter, a delight. But also subscribe to the PraxisCast Patreon, because that means that these guys continue to ask me to come on to shout about railways and buses in the future. So do that.
It's true. The guest appearances will continue so long as the Patreon subscriptions do.
Exactly.
Thanks. Thanks again for coming on, man. And for everyone else, please subscribe to the Patreon. Patreon.com/PraxisCast. You can get 2 bonus episodes a month there. Plus Discord access. Come join us in the Discord. It's fun. We are slightly over the butter psychosis.
I will drag us all back there.
We can go back there. Yeah, but,
we can always go back.
Yeah, we can return with a V actually.
Merch is available, praxiscast.tmail.com. I don't know if there's some sort of fucking free shipping thing on. There seems to be every like second or third week. Why don't you go to the website, have a look at the merch and see at the same time? Maybe that's an idea. And also, Twitch streams are a thing that happen usually at about 6:30 on a Sunday evening. Twitch.tv/practicecast. Don't know if we won this week. Maybe they will, maybe they won't. Tune in and find out. Okay, bye.
Yeah. Bye-bye.
Bye.